Alright guys, so from the creator of Fire and Maneuver, who is Armchair Historian, by the way, one of my favorite historical YouTubers, comes a new strategy game called Master of Command: The 7 Years' War. Yes! It is the 7 Years' War in a strategy game, which is really cool. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's a very interesting conflict to set a new game in, and it's being developed currently. About 2-3 months ago, they released a trailer and a bit of a development blog about what the game is going to look like, mechanics, things like that. And I have been saying that I'm going to cover it and look into the details and give you my opinion a little bit and kind of feedback about how things look, especially since then some things have changed. So now I found the time to do that, and that's what we're going to do today. All right, so we're going to start with the dev blog here, and I'm going to be stopping and pausing every now and then because there have been a lot of changes and updates to the concept since this was released a few months ago, and I'm just, stop here and there to let you know what I think as well and give some feedback. So let's get started here.
If you haven't seen already, we released our first trailer for Master of Command: Prussian Glory.
And that's what we just watched. Prussian Glory is the original name of the game because it was only going to include Prussia, France, Austria, and Russia. And now it's going to also include the British. So the British are going to be a playable faction when it releases.
Comprehensive gameplay reveal sometime this summer. For now, let's dive into
that comprehensive gameplay reveal. I think, based on the chat in the Discord, is going to happen later this month or beginning of August. So keep an eye out for that as well.
What Master of Command is all about. Keep in mind that everything you'll see today is just early concepts and sketches, as we're still in early development. Master of Command is a unique single-player game that pairs historical strategy with the roguelike genre.
So, historical strategy with the roguelike genre. What that means is, this is kind of a mix between Battle Brothers or Bannerlord even with strategy, the way we know it. Total War, EU4, Crusader Kings, that kind of like real large-scale strategy, essentially. And there are battles here, like we saw in the scene before. So there's a kind of more granular, detailed view on the tactical side of engagement between various armies, and all of that is basically mixed in with you leading an army made up of regiments and commanders and all that kind of and customization that comes with all of this as well, because roguelike is very it's all about personality and having a bit of you in there as well. So it's quite an interesting combination in my opinion.
18th century, during the 7 Years' War, you start the game by selecting one of 3 factions: Prussia and Austria. And
Prussia, Russia, and Austria, and France is in there as well. Hopefully that will be playable as well. I don't know if that's confirmed, but as I said, it's going to have the British now as well, and it's expanded into the 7 Years' War.
Selecting an army composition, you want.
So this is what I was talking about. You've got a lot of customization in terms of your officers. This is the army composition, so you can have different types of units per regiment. You can see here, you've got the artillery unit, cavalry, spears, muskets, different styles of ranged infantry as well. And you've got more melee swordsmen, etc. as well on the kind of close range combat. There are various values on the left under the portrait that are like, they must be related to just straight up money, supply, logistics, something like that. And there are attributes as well. So every officer, depending on how much experience they gain, I'm guessing this like yellow bar under officer 2 here is just an indication of how much experience they've gained. They get attributes, which is quite cool as well. Lots to tell here, honestly. You can get recruits, Freikorps, so very kind of faction dependent stuff as well. And yeah, there's a specific officer view for you to have a look at too.
Start your playthrough with, each with its own pros and cons.
And yeah, what he's saying here basically is every faction gets its own unique army composition as well, which is pretty bread and butter, I would say, in strategy games.
More army compositions can be unlocked through completing challenges. We chose this setting for the game as it's mostly an unexplored theme and puts the player in the shoes of Frederick the Great, who was essentially fighting a war of survival on all fronts.
Now you know why I like Armchair Historian with his historical content, because he's a really like obviously he has a great voice, but it's also just very personable, approachable. It's all about, you know, the history, the historical context to everything, about what he's talking about. So it's just like it's really nicely laid in to the video. I love that.
This really provides a unique and challenging experience that's well suited to the roguelike genre. For those unfamiliar, roguelike games are those that primarily fulfill two requirements: permanent death and random map generation.
Yeah, so essentially, you know, what we can tell from this is you're going to have this army composition that you start with, and if you lose everyone, you have to start again. And if you go into a specific map to begin a kind of series of campaigns in terms of progressing through and trying to get to an enemy army, that map is randomly generated, right? So it's going to be very unique every time you play it, which is quite cool. It's an interesting way to do it. It can be a little repetitive, but I don't know. We'll see.
That in a bit. Once you choose your army, you're sent to a regional map surrounding the Kingdom of Prussia. Every playthrough contains a random shuffle of
So the map is like exclusively played in Prussia. All of these regions, there's one, two, three, four, five, and if you count the top right yellow region, there's six regions for you to campaign in, and each of these regions are unique, and each of them will have randomly generated maps when you go in there to campaign. So just keep that in mind as well. I wonder if these regions will get a bit expanded out as well in future DLCs, or I don't know.
regions in this general area, meaning everyone's 7 Years' War experience is going to play out differently every time.
Ah, okay, cool. So yes, there are lots of different regions, and every time you start a new campaign, you get an assortment of new regions. So if you're playing as Austria, coming in from the east, or is it south? I think southeast. You're going to get a different set of regions to if you started with Russia or France, or indeed British kind of armies later on as well. It's all going to be quite unique and different, which is quite cool. I like that.
Playthrough, fighting may be
But obviously, Berlin and that central region in the capital of Prussia is going to be quite static, right? That's the end goal, to get to Berlin. If you're one of the other powers, of course. If you're Prussia, you're trying to defend it from them.
concentrated in the north around Pomerania, but in another, it's around Silesia and Saxony. Every region contains a set difficulty.
This is a nicer view, actually, in terms of what you can see, how much of the map of Europe it covers. So you can see, yeah, it actually covers a lot of land when you can kind of get this view. I would really like it to go further east and west into France and Russia at some point as well. But yeah, this is a nice way of looking at it, actually. And you can see the flags in each of the contested regions and what's happening there. Each of them looks like it has rewards for when you go through the campaign and win. That's quite nice. And of course, you're kind of there's no element of steamrolling, because with each campaign, with each region, you're losing a lot. You know, you're making decisions, taking a risk to go through this way, and maybe losing more supply. You lose troops in this battle, but at the end of it, you get a hussar unit or more supplies or whatever. So it kind of balances out, and hopefully, if you're tactical enough, you can keep going and not lose too many men that you've probably lost the campaign. You know the point of no return, right?
And reward, and these change every time you play. Now let's talk about what happens when you choose a region to campaign in. Once chosen, a completely randomly generated terrain layout is made for your campaign in that area. This unpredictability forces you, like a real commander of the 18th century, to adapt to dynamic conditions.
So this is a concept that doesn't actually apply anymore. Recently, I was looking at the Discord, and this kind of idea here on this map is a node-based map. So your army will only move via the roads you can see here, the white roads, and the towns and camps and cities in between are where you're going to be able to, you know, loot or gather supplies or have a battle with an enemy army, etc. So this isn't this isn't the concept for the game anymore. The roads have all been removed, and you can freely move anywhere with your army, which I think is a much better decision actually in terms of game concept, to be able to move anywhere. It's much more roguelike. It's not very linear. You're truly taking a risk in wherever you're going, and it means there's a bit more kind of discoverability about it versus knowing where each of the nodes are on the map when you start. So yeah, I quite like that they've changed that. So everything that we're seeing here right now, a lot of it still applies. It's just not quite accurate anymore.
Ensuring every playthrough is a test of your strategic abilities. Your mission here is to reach the enemy encampment and face them in a large climactic battle, which is ultimately how you secure a region, like painting the map in a historical strategy game or beating a boss in a roguelike. But the enemy's camp that you're after grows the longer you spend campaigning in this region. If you move too fast to reach them, you may face the enemy unprepared, but too slow, and they'll grow too strong.
So this is an interesting concept. It's all about balance, right? It's not trying to be very asymmetrical. If you take your time, you're going to face a larger army, but you're also probably going to have more of something else, more troops or more supplies, or maybe more experience because you've gone through a few more things. So your ability to deal with that larger army grows as you expand in through the map and take different avenues. Versus maybe you're more desperate, you don't have a lot of troops left over, you've run out of supplies, you don't have a lot of time, and you beeline straight for the camp. It's a much smaller army, but you're also not as prepared. So either way, it's margins, right? It's margins. You're going through the longer route to get more of something and see what's going to happen, but you're risking a much larger army to face at the end. But marginally, that might be better for you or worse. That is the risk, which is quite cool. And as I said, this isn't quite the concept anymore. You're free form, free movement, which means you don't you know where the enemy camp is, but you don't know what you might find on the way. So it makes this discoverability a bit more interesting than just having nodes like this and following a road.
To prepare for this fight, you'll be doing things like aiding locals through unique encounters, conscripting troops at local villages or towns, and even confronting small enemy forces to gain veterancy and loot, all while advancing toward the enemy camp. And the terrain on this map isn't just decoration. You can leverage the terrain to gain advantages, just
Yeah, so different terrain that you encounter, mountains, and battles there, presumably are going to be quite, unique to those terrain features. So that's quite cool, I imagine. But again, having different terrain features complicates your progress. So if you go through a mountain range, then presumably that's going to take a lot more supply to get through, and you might get to the enemy camp quicker, but you're sacrificing more, right? So again, really good game design.
strategic masters like Hannibal Barca or Gustavus Adolphus did, by choosing to navigate through challenging terrain, like using mountain passes to obscure your movements. You slow the rate at which the enemy's camp is reinforced, as they've lost track of your army. This strategy, while
Okay, so that's a interesting thing to point out. They lose the rate at which the enemy army reinforce if they've lost track of your movement. So I wonder if there's an element of line of sight, visibility, a kind of messenger system, something like that. Ultimate General American Revolution does this really well in terms of, it is quite difficult to deal with, but not being able to see where the enemy is, where even your friendly armies are, if you've got a couple, gives you an element of A, surprise, but also B, real risk, not knowing where the enemy is going to be. So I wonder if there's that kind of a mechanic that can be incorporated here in Master of Command as well.
Effective comes with its own set of challenges, including the increased consumption of your supplies and high attrition rates on your troops. Visiting nearby
Okay, so attrition is a mechanic as well. That's good to know.
Might be the prudent course of action to prepare for such a demanding campaign. Once you find yourself thrust into combat, whether it's the enemy camp or a group of enemies along the way, you'll be sent into a pitched battle. Our battle system operates fully in real time, requiring you to vigilantly monitor.
So, a little context here. Armchair Historian's first game was Fire and Maneuver, and it was a very interesting game from a battle perspective. There wasn't a lot to talk about from a campaign, really, but what he developed was really a turn-by-turn battle system in which you move your troops forward one turn, the enemy responds, and then you meet, and you engage. You've got artillery, cavalry coming around. It was not real time. It was turn-based, and in many ways that limited the gameplay. A lot of people enjoyed it. It was an interesting game to play, but there were some mistakes made, and including that, I think a more real-time battle system is it's fun and it's engaging. It's you have to click a lot more often. You're really reacting rather than being proactive, and that leads to just more fun gameplay, in my opinion. I mean, Total War does it so well, obviously. So to see this here is really good too. This to me reminds me a lot more, again, of Ultimate General American Revolution. The way there are various objects here, houses, trees, fences. Will you be able to take cover? It just definitely reminds me of that. It's quite a nice system, even if it looks a little bit more on the cartoonish side. It looks miles better than Fire and Maneuver, and honestly, I'm okay with this style in terms of it's not trying to be realistic and cinematic. That's not the goal. The goal is to have a fun, well-designed game. So I'm all for it, to be honest.
Your troops' morale, ammunition, and effectiveness.
You've got morale, ammunition, and effectiveness. You've got various formations. Wow, this is a nice view. So various formations, weapon types, ammunition types. You've got different colors of troops here. You've got a green uniform, blue on red. You've got different, colors and officer types, and you've got a wagon there. So there's a supply system for each regiment as well, which is quite interesting. You need to protect, presumably. And there are huge numbers of troops here. I mean, 1,200 per unit is very, very large. So I'm interested to see how big the scale of the battles are going to be as well. Lots of formations, rank and fire, all that jazz, square formation. There's like a scouting button as well here as well, which is quite cool. Yes, so very interesting.
How each of your divisions has a commanding officer. Despite our game's stylized graphics, we are aiming for battles to be realistic and impactful with long-range engagements. Assuming you've won your battle and live to fight another day, it's time to check out your army's camp. This screen is where you can manage all the regiments and officers under your command. You'll be able to equip your regiment.
Cool, yeah. So you start off with one of these, presumably, and you kind of customize the weapons that they have, the logistics you might gain through battles and looting, etc., helping the locals, and then through more currency, you can unlock more kind of slots in your camp to recruit more officers, and then therefore regiments as well. And through all of that, you gain experience, new equipment, and attributes, and all that. So it's quite nice. It's a nice kind of like home base HQ view of what you've got and maybe what you can buy and etc. Cool.
All sorts of individual items, including muskets, bayonets, and even small items like cartridge boxes or grenades.
That's cool. So you can actually customize your cartridges as well.
Additionally, you can personalize your army by changing the pattern or color of regimental flags, which...
Oh, cool. So regimental flags are customizable. As I said, the uniforms are as well.
Feel a sense of attachment to these troops.
And this is so important. This is something that Total War just doesn't have anymore. It used to have a lot more of it. And over time, these things got removed. But being able to have your own personality in here, to customize things the way you'd like them to be. It's taking again that roguelike element of personality in the game that you're playing, reflecting your own. And I really like that. There should be a lot more of this in games, in strategy games in the future.
Who you'll be taking with you for the whole duration of your campaign. Instead of discarding weaker units over time and replacing them with better ones, you'll be able to directly upgrade and reform your existing regiment.
That's so cool. Again, just like Total War used to have, being able to, I mean, to be fair, some of the newer games have this, but upgrading your units, not losing the identity that you gave them, and not having to then recruit new units right off the bat because you've lost an entire, like, that's not exactly what the aim is here. The aim is to create an army that is with you throughout the entire campaign, which I really like.
Like upgrading bare bones recruits all the way up to a grenadier regiment. This preserves your regiment's history and the items you've given them. Throughout your campaign,
And the key here is history. I wonder if there's going to be a sort of, this is your regiment, this is where you started with, and you've gained more regiments over time. Maybe, you've played it for a few days. You look back and remember, hey, this first regiment, oh yeah, there's a record of that battle I fought. What an amazing battle that was. Like having an actual record for each of the regiments, the battles they fought, the casualties they took, and what was replaced, the enemies they defeated, that kind of like record for each of the regiments would be quite cool to see as well.
will gain experience and improve your army through attributes, which
Yeah,
you
so
can add to your general.
commanders get attributes.
As you grow, so do your officers with new traits and abilities.
Wow. Okay, yeah, lots of new traits, abilities here. Firepower, resilience, mobility. So there's a lot. There's a really nice kind of interesting, lots of really cool kind of, yeah, skills essentially and traits that you can gain as you play. I'm not seeing a lot here that's negative, which would be I would say is the only thing that's really missing. Like a lot of this is very positive. It would be interesting to see if there's a more dynamic version of this system in which your officers or your commander gains negative traits based on experiences and things that happen in the field, right? Like if you lose a battle or you win it just with the skin of your teeth, maybe you've been wounded, or I don't know if there's a loyalty mechanic, but maybe your units have lost a little bit of loyalty because you've essentially caused too many of your own casualties due to your tactical decisions. So a bit more of a dynamic system to see if negative traits can be added would be cool too.
These officers hail from different cultures and backgrounds, each bringing different bonuses and penalties that you can play around.
Okay, penalties. He said it. Penalties. So they bring penalties. Do they gain penalties dynamically as well?
The ability of your regiments. There's a bit of risk and reward at play because you must assign an officer to be attached to a regiment in each division. So the closer you have that unit to the front line, the bigger buffs you'll notice.
And of course, the worse an officer is for a unit you're recruiting, the more risky it is, right? Maybe you don't have alternatives. So yeah.
But you're also risking that officer's life in combat. For those familiar with the time period, you'll know that many officers were killed in battle during this war, especially.
Oh, okay, that's grim.
And secured your first region. How do you win a game of Master of Command? Well, once you've taken enough regions, which get increasingly difficult over time, a final assault is launched around your capital, and this will be the hardest battle for you to fight. Our difficulty curve looks something like this, which starts the game off easier and becomes harder as you learn the ropes. Sometimes, historical strategy games can have an inverse of this difficulty curve, which is why some of you may have found yourselves quitting certain empire-building games because you get so powerful by the end that the AI simply can't keep up.
So this is interesting. I've actually spoken to Armchair Historian about this game. I spoke to him back when he was maybe 2 or 3 weeks before he released this, and we had a conversation about what do I think as a Total War player? How does this look? The various concepts he's developing. How does this work in terms of in context to a Total War player? What do I like? What do I don't like? One of the things that I liked was this. The game design is based on having difficulty increase over time, where a lot of strategy games have the inverse, as he said here. It's all about the early game, discovering something new. It's fun, it's unique, and you're growing, and you're going through challenges, etc. But over time, you get so powerful, it becomes a steamroll, and really, Total War has no solution to that. I mean, there's the late game hordes that just kind of pop up, and you have to deal with it. There's big disasters that affect every mechanic and force you to just turtle up or make some difficult decisions, but at the end of the day, steamrolling is not something I think CA have been able to resolve. Whereas here, it's the opposite. It's getting more difficult, and that final battle is the most difficult thing you're ever going to face. And I wonder if that's going to work. I'm not entirely convinced. Obviously, it's great on paper and concept, but I've never really properly seen a game that does this well. Having difficulty increase over time, it has to be balanced with your capability. So you have to still have a good chance of overcoming that, right? And it's not like in Total War games difficulty doesn't increase. It does increase over time. It's just you get way more capable than how you should be at that point. So hopefully it's about balance. It's about you still growing and getting better experience, better units and troops, etc. It still needs to have that difficulty match your capability at that end game.
We've spent a lot of time refining our core gameplay loop, and despite the smaller region we're covering, we really think you'll find our game to be a unique experience every time you play. For now, that's all I've got to show off. I hope this gives you a clearer picture for our plan for Master of Command.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's it essentially. It's a very interesting devlog. Lots has changed since then. So we know the British are going to be included in the game. We know that the battle map system is going to be, in terms of the regional campaign system, is not going to be node based. There's going to be a lot of free movement and moving around, probably real time, I'm guessing as well. So enemy scouts may come out and try and find you, or you find a town, you need to do a bit of a support the locals battle, all of that happening in real time. So that would be quite cool to see. There's a few videos on the Discord as well about some of the animations, the kind of the muzzle flash of regiments firing and etc. So all of that looks really good as well. And there's a few other gameplay bits that they're still showing off on the Discord. That's quite cool on the campaign side, concept art, UI, things like that. So it's very much worth being in the Discord, guys. By the way, if this interests you, I'll drop a link in the video description for you to drop into the Discord, and you can absolutely keep up to date with all the developments here in the game's progress. So yeah, that's essentially it for today, guys. This has been a bit of my kind of discussion about Master of Command, the 7 Years of War. My impression is I'm quite intrigued. There's some really nice, interesting concepts here. I really like the idea of combining a rogue-like kind of set of mechanics with a strategy game that is both played out on a bit of the campaign and on the battle side. Obviously, it's much more battles than it is campaign, but that element of moving your army around, logistical management, recruitment, supply management, all of that. It's really interesting. Especially the customization is quite cool as well. The personality that goes into each of your units, your commanders, all of that is really nice. I'd love to see more. I hope the plan still is to come out with a new devlog the end of the month or beginning of next month. So we'll have a bit more information about how development is going, how things are looking. But yeah, as an initial impression, I think it's a very interesting game that could gain a lot of great following, and people will buy into it. This is an era that not many people are making games about. Hell, I mean, Total War hasn't made a game about this in a long time. So it's a great era. Things look really interesting and good, and I can't wait to see more. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, drop any thoughts or questions in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you think about Master of Command. Let's have a bit of a discussion here, and subscribe for more videos just like this. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.